Hi guys, welcome back to the channel. First of all, I want to say thank you so much for the 1,000 subscribers that I have. Really appreciate it, and I'm very excited about it, so thank you so much. Second thing is, I'm really excited to test ride this today. So what is it? It is a Specialized Kenevo Expert, and Joey from Specialized has given me a lend, so thanks a mil, Joey. So let's take you through a few bits about her. I suppose she's a bit like a downhill bike, so I'm really excited because I haven't ridden a downhill bike before. And for that, you have the RockShox Boxer Select triple clamp forks, 180 travel. Then we have a coil on the back, so love a coil, and it's RockShox Super Deluxe. And it's 27.5, so I haven't ridden a 27.5 since my commensal, so that should be interesting. And other than that, there's a cool little tool here which I've never seen before, Specialized own brand, little multi-tool. And being an e-bike, I suppose you want to know about the battery. It's a 700 watt battery on this bike, so you'll be going for miles and miles and miles. That's what makes it the Expert. The Comp has actually got a 500 watt battery, and the motor is a Bros motor. So let's go bring her out on the trail. Things got off to an interesting start when we realised the first trail we were going to ride was actually an ice rink. So we tried to escape through the forest. The only problem was the snow in the forest was just hiding that ice rink underneath. Luckily, we found some other trails that weren't quite so treacherous. Bearing in mind though that these were some of the toughest conditions I've ever ridden in, and that it was my first day on this bike, it became obvious to me that I was going to fall in love with this bike over the next few days. One of the things that made me love it so much was the capability of the motor for uphill, especially in boost mode. This is boost mode against boost mode on the Specialized Turbo Levo SL, and you can see I'm literally motoring up the hill, and there was very little effort involved from me. So this bike is the Kenevo Expert, and it has a 700 watt hour battery, powered by a Specialized 2.1 250 watt motor, which produces an eye-watering 90 newton meters of torque. So it's no wonder that you can power up the hill so easily. The Kenevo Expert retails at just under €8,300, whereas the Kenevo Comp retails at just under €6,500. You'll still have the Specialized 2.1 motor, but the battery is reduced to 500 watt hour. Saying this, on average, I covered 20 to 30 kilometres each day and used boost mode uphill and eco or trail mode on the downhill sections, and I never got through more than half of the 700 watt hour battery. Obviously, the weight of the rider plays a factor, the terrain you're riding, etc., but for me, the 500 watt hour would be more than enough. Where I found this bike really came into its own was when things got steeper and gnarlier. And this bike really gave me the confidence to tackle some tough terrain. With the slack head angle and additional weight, this bike felt really planted, but for me what sets this bike apart was the confidence-inspiring 180mm travel RockShox Boxer triple clamp forks and the RockShox Super Deluxe coil, which together felt amazingly plush. This bike is the 2020 model, but when I checked out the specs for the Kenevo Expert 2021, there seems to be a mixture of coil or air shock, but it stays with the RockShox Super Deluxe. Whereas the cheaper Kenevo Comp comes with a Marzocchi Bomber Z1 fork with 180mm travel and a Fox Performance Level DPX2 rear shock, which I have on my own Orbea Rollin, and I can vouch is a great shock. So what else do I love about this bike? Strangely enough, even with the 700 watt hour battery and the beefy downhill forks, this bike didn't actually feel too heavy when I went to lift it. We weighed it and it was just under 24 kilograms. The Comp is going to be even lighter, bearing in mind the smaller battery. And what I felt was really interesting was that it never felt cumbersome going downhill and was really manoeuvrable. This is probably helped by the 27.5 wheels. Because of the geometry, even though I'm used to riding a 29er, I still felt really comfortable on this bike. The sizes of this bike go from S2 to S5, which is probably the equivalent of small to extra large. When I used the size guide from the Specialized website, it recommended an S2 for me, whereas this is actually an S3. And again, interesting enough, if I was to buy this bike, the S3 is the size I would go for. The dropper post goes all the way into the frame, so that meant the bike wasn't too tall for me and I could dab if I needed to. The brakes on this bike are SRAM Code R and come on both the Expert and the Comp, and I found they gave plenty of stopping power, especially considering its weight. I did find in the wet they weren't quite as good as the Shimano XT I have on the Rallon, but that could have been down to the type of pads. The bike has a SRAM setup for the shifters and derailleur, and unusually it's an 11 speed, as most bikes now are 12 speed. But when you have a motor that produces 19 Newton meters of torque, I don't think having another gear would make much difference. Shifting was really smooth, and all of the cockpit controls were in easy to reach positions, including the controls for the motor. Unlike some Shimano and Bosch motors, which have LED screens on the bike, Specialized have gone for a minimalist approach. You shift modes really easily with a simple up or down switch close to the dropper lever, and you can see how much battery is left and what mode you're in from the small integrated LED built into the top tube. If you want to know more about how much battery you have used or how far you have travelled, you can download the Specialized Mission Controlled app. But I was having way too much fun on this bike to mess around with tech. If I was to criticise anything on this bike, and trust me, it's hard because I love it so much. Both are personal things, but for me, the colour is a little bit dull. You only have to look at my Orbea Rallon and my previous Commensal to see I'm all about the colour. The triple clamp forks took a bit of getting used to for me, particularly when I tried to track stand, as the forks will only turn a certain amount of degrees before hitting the head tube. But obviously this setup has been on downhill bikes for years. But overall, I enjoyed every minute of this test ride, and if anything, I felt that the bike gave me confidence to try stuff I hadn't done before, like what you'll see on the final clip of the video, where a section that I normally roll, I decided with all my newfound confidence to jump off and ended up landing to flat. Thankfully, the amazing RockShox forks saved my bacon and gave me all the more reason to love this bike. So would I buy this bike? Yes, definitely, in a heartbeat. But I'll have to save up my money first. As always, thank you so much for tuning in, and thank you again for subscribing and bringing me up to 1,000 subscribers. I really, really appreciate it so much. And if you haven't subscribed yet, please do. If you have any comments or questions, leave them below and I'll get back to you. Thanks again, and hopefully I'll see you in the next video. I leave you with the Kenevo saving my life.